Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Fine.
Pretty good.
Hello. Judy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good.
Music.
Seems like they got everything
Much
worked out
better.
with you. And Miss Betts, you're doing well?
Yes, sir, I'm doing wonderfully well. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. All right. Good to hear and see y'all. Y'all are taking care of yourselves. I'm glad. My volume seem okay to you?
Sir?
Does my sound seem okay?
Sounds fine.
All
Better
right.
than
Yes,
it
sir.
did this morning.
All right. We'll get going here in a sec. Judy and Ms. Betts, y'all did get the exam, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent. We're going to go over a review here in just a bit, and I'll review everything. And for those of you that, all of you have not taken an exam with me, so you may be apprehensive. I know I always was, and I still have to take exams on different things. We have to do training and so on. It's like, how could I have missed that one? But anyway, you should do well if you've paid attention, if you made your own notes, if you pay attention today while we go over this together, you should do very well. So I'm leading you along slowly at first here, right? And so I'm pointing things out to you that you need to know. Yes, ma'am. Question? Yes, it is. And it's some fill in the blank and some short answer. Now come on in. I'm going to make sure my phone is off. There's no way that my vehicles would qualify for an extended warranty, but somebody thinks they should, right? Anyway, I've told y'all we're not driving the 51 Chevy right now, but I drive my 71 Datsun, and we have a van that's over 20 years old. Come on in. And so none of those qualify for an extended warranty, but I get those calls. I hope you don't get them, but I thought I was on the no-call list. But just so we won't be interrupted, I'm turning my phone off. I will tell you all this, and if you did not get review notes, you missed last week, and I put them on Blackboard. I sent you all an email. Did you get those emails from me? You saw it on Blackboard. If anyone needs an actual copy, hard copy, I have those. Anyone want one? Come on up. What did I sell that one to you for? $5, Brady? $5 bucks? No, it's free. It's free. It's free. Special deal today. Anyone else need one? Okay. Make sure you have one. So, I hope everyone's doing well. You're liking the weather change. Stick around because it's going to change some more. It's going to get into the 90s, tomorrow or next day, and then it's going to plummet down into the 40s. So it's fall, right? So we'll get ready for it. And then we're going to have a string of nice fall weather, 80s and maybe low 90s, and then nights are going to be nice in the 50s. So that's good. I told you all that we're working on getting this new mosaic finished up, and the critical thing for us, hopefully Friday, Lord willing and everything works well, we're going to start mounting that, but it has to be, for the mortar, it has to be above freezing, but it really needs to be above 50 or 55 degrees, because mortar has water in it, right? And we'll talk about cement and mortar and so on later, and how that came about and how important it is in the civilization of the world. But it needs to be not above 32 degrees, because freezing actually starts around 50 to 55 degrees. Did y'all know that? Because the molecular change in substances, the water begins to crystallize at that point. So we've got to pay attention to that and make sure that there are 2 or 3 days that it doesn't get below 50 to 55 degrees. So y'all be thinking about me come Friday and this weekend and next week. We're going to be putting this mosaic up. I'll keep you posted on that and show you pictures later. So that's the big thing in our news at home. I did get to talk to my mom the other day. My mom's gone through some real health changes, and she survived COVID pneumonia at 86. She's back out of the hospital. She's in right now it's more or less a nursing home, rehab, but a lot of people have prayed for her, and I did get to talk to her the other day for the first time in a while. So that's great news, really great. Yes. Hello, goodbye. So, you're wondering, what is on the test? How long is the test, right? It's about, 11 inches or so, something like that. Anyway, it's only one page, it's only 10 questions. So, let's go through this and pick out the things that are of particular importance to you all that you need to know. Now, we talked about this from the very beginning. We looked at a lot of material, and the textbook goes on almost too long, showing you examples of what art is and what art can be and how art gets across to you. But one of the things that, and this is the first thing on your notes, that art communicates, right? It is a language all its own, and it communicates how? Visually. Visual means. Visual images. Now, if it's something that's auditory, it becomes music, right? One of the arts, but it's visual means. So, you need to remember that, and it is communication. Sometimes it's just like any communication. We had problems with communicating with Plainview the other day. There were some issues with the technical things there. So sometimes communication works and sometimes it does not. But artworks that are aiming to get a message across, they're communicating, and they're using visual images, visual means to do that. So that's kind of an underscore for everything in here. And we talked about different kinds of art. Excuse me. Whatever blew in yesterday, the ragweed counts up and everything, so y'all excuse me. I'm going to have to hydrate myself. We talked about different kinds of art. We looked at graphic art and so on. But what would you say fine art is?
Painting, drawings.
Yeah, the sculpture, the things that you'd see in a museum or in an art gallery, right? That's fine art. Not that that's really fine, but it's fine art, right? And some of it's fine and some of it Well, anyway, so it's those things that we would say are created by artists just for enjoyment. And they're things that, yes, they're communicating messages and so on, but it's not the same as a graphic design or a logo or an advertisement, a billboard design, those kinds of things. T-shirt designs, all those are in a different, they're in a different category. It's not really fine art, so in the same way. And we talked about all the different kinds of places, pardon me, that we could find art in museums and galleries. And of course, art is everywhere if we look at it. And I've had people say, well, art is in nature. Yes, it is. There's beauty in nature, but it's not art the same way we're talking about it in this class. And then I made some other statements here, but I want you to skip down to that part where it says that art communicates by its own language. It has three parts. What are those three parts? Subject, form, and content. The subject is what? It's the image or what it is, what you're seeing, right? Now, the subject can be something easily discernible, or it can be abstract, or maybe even non-objective. Might just be a swirl of colors, right? That's the subject, color, right? And then we have the content is, what would you say the content is? All right. The meaning of it is what it's about, right? And then we have, what else? The form means what? What does it refer to?
The material.
All right, how it's put together. It's the composition, right? It's the design of it, if you want to think of it that way. And so it's those three parts that we can really say fit every work of art: subject, form, and content. Now, I told you that Mr. Hope thinks one is more important than the others. What is that? The content. Because the content drives everything. Now, I'll show you how there's some forms or movements of art where they change that. They say the content's more important. Come on in. We're going over the review. You have your review sheet. Did you get one the other day from me? Were you here last Thursday? Here you go. So it looks like this. It's gone up. They're $6 now. Oh, okay. Okay. So, this idea that sometimes some artists say that the form is more important, that the way it's composed is more important than either the subject or the content. But I would say most of the time, with my own work, with most artists, they start with an idea, right? It's a concept. It's maybe nebulous at first, but then they zero it in on what they really want to say in this work, and they compose it. The form follows that, and of course the subject, the things that are in the artwork follow that, to get this content, this idea, this message across to us as the viewer, right? And that always drives, if you see any of my artwork, that's where it starts. It's the thing, yes. It's the way it's put together, yes, but it's the idea, the content is the most important part. Remember those three things. And then we talked about this thing of iconography. And I'm going to see if I can open this now and go back to something here and refer to it. Maybe. I don't have these labeled as well as I should. I'm still getting used to this new book and putting everything together and so on. So we're learning it together as we go along. Anyway, let's see if I can get down here and find what I'm looking for. Yeah, your text talks about this here, but I think I put it in a different form. Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. I've got to find myself. But this idea of iconography, an icon is what?
Something recognizable.
It's something that's a symbol too for something else, right? Yes, we recognize it, but it has meaning beyond what, it has a strong meaning. We might say it that way. And I'm sorry if I'm not getting there. I'll put this on screen for everybody if I find it here. Yeah, here's where I wanted to be. And this work here, let me see if I can get on screen. There we are. Okay. So, your text shows this work by one of the Van Eycks, Jan Van Eyck. Some people consider the Van Eycks some of the greatest artists ever. But here's this work by Jan Van Eyck called The Portrait of Giovanni Arnolfini and His Wife. And I'm not sure why they have a question mark there. Titles come and go. Artists may give them, and sometimes museum people give them. But here's a better image of that. And it lists there, I'll go back, it lists it with the iconography, and I've maybe simplified the definition, but I've said that it's a system of visual images whose meaning is understood by a given culture or group. Symbols represent more than appears on the surface. Now, we looked at this. We talked about the different symbols in here. The shoes being off, for instance. It's a holy ceremony. He's on holy ground. And it's a very serious thing. The dog is not just a cute little pet, right? The dog stands for faithfulness, fidelity, the name Fido, right? It is, even the dress, which is strange to us as a green dress for a bride, means that this marriage would be fruitful. It would be that they would have children. And even the idea that it looks like she may be pregnant is this idea that they're hoping for that. Probably that wasn't the case. It would be a scandal. I mean, in 1434, it's not that it didn't happen, but it would be a scandal and not the subject of the portrait. And so you have the Stations of the Cross there and all these things. But I focused on this one thing. It's a candelabra, right? Which uses real candles. I don't recommend candles in your home. We've had 2 almost fires. One in our bed and breakfast and one in my father-in-law's home because of candles. Thank goodness it didn't happen. If you have candles, use them very carefully in a good place, right? But that was live in those days, right? Now, why in the world would they show this in such detail, Jan Van Eyck, with just one candle there? It's symbolic, and it's an icon, and the one candle stands for what? The presence of God in this ceremony. It's a holy ceremony, right? They're making a vow to each other before God that they will be true to one another all of their lives until death do them part. Enough people don't take that vow seriously enough. Anyway, so we talked about that. So back to iconography on your review. So let me get off here. See if I can get myself back there. There we go. All right. So, any questions about this first part here, kind of an intro? All right. Chapter 1.1, line, shape. I'm sorry. I have chapter 3 here. I have 2 different versions I'm looking at. Language of art, the visual elements, right? That's where we are right now. And we talked about this idea of these visual elements and that I'm not going to ask you to write a list of all of these here. Line, shape, value, color, texture, space, time, and motion. We'll finish that today after the exam's over. I'll try to forge on with the next unit, next part of the unit. But this idea of these art elements being really what elements is. It's elemental, it's basic, right? And I said these elements like line and shape and color and texture and so on, they're like the basic building blocks, but I also said they're like what? The ingredients in a recipe. I gave you that example of a recipe, and you gave me things that could go into that recipe. So these are the things that would go into the recipe of making a work of art. Not all artworks have color, but not all recipes have chili powder, right? Thank goodness. But thank goodness for chili powder, right? Or peppers or whatever, spice. So the art elements are like the ingredients in a recipe. They're the parts that go together to make the work. And you'll find why I'm using this analogy later more. We talked about line being the path of a moving point and what lines imply. One of the things that I mentioned the other day, you remember I told you the story about the Fulbright scholar from South Korea taking a video, just doing a full circle. And one of the things I think some people like about this country here, some people hate it because it's just wide open spaces. What's the visibility? Usually 10 or 12 miles you can see in any one direction. That's pretty amazing. You can't say that in most places in the world, but on the plains, on this high tableland, the Llano Estacado that we live on, you can see a long way. And a lot of people think that that long horizontal line of the landscape, the horizon line, is peaceful. It's restful. We said that those lines suggest certain things, right? And vertical lines suggest strength. Horizontal lines suggest stability and rest. Diagonal lines suggest tension. So we talked about that curved lines are graceful. And so that association we discussed. And I'm on my second page now. So we're going on and talking about shape. Shape is two-dimensional. I drew an example of the shape. Shape is flat, right? It's just an enclosed area. But if we add some lines to it or shading or something, we begin to get the association or the illusion of form. Form is 3D. We said that shapes are geometric and organic. So we talked about shape as being flat, and then we talked about form and showed some examples of form there. Positive shape, we talked about being the object, right? And positive shape is the thing. If I put my hand up here in front of the whiteboard behind me, my hand is the shape. The area between my fingers there, that's the negative space, right? Positive form, really, but positive and negative. And so we talked about the difference in that. We said, too, that you could measure a shape by the length and the width, but you could measure a form by the length and the width and what else? The depth. And the height sometimes gets confusing, but height and length is just a long measurement. The width is the short measurement, or the narrow measurement. And the depth has to refer to, just like this remote I'm holding, how the thickness of it, the other dimension of the three. And we talked about that. But don't get confused with height and length. They're the same thing, right? So add depth in there as your other dimension. We talked about the idea of sculpture. You remember I showed you examples of relief sculptures? If I had a coin in my pocket, I don't. Anyone have a silver dollar they can loan me for? No, I'm kidding. But if you take a coin out, you can barely feel that image on the surface, right? It's just barely raised from the surface. So that's a very low relief, or what we call a bas relief. It's just minuscule difference in the flatness of the background and the raised surface and the lettering and other images on there. That's a bas relief. A high relief, we looked at the Greek sculptures where they're almost fully dimensional. But then we looked at some sculptures where it's just barely raised from the background. So low and high relief sculptures. And then we talked about the idea of a sculpture you could walk all the way around. That's a freestanding sculpture. We'll look at sculpture more later, but that kind of dovetails in with the idea of texture and form. And texture refers to the surface of an object. So we're hitting all of these ingredients, right? All the elements of design. And then we moved on to value, and the idea of value not being how much it's worth, right? But value in this case referring to what? How light or dark it is, yeah. And we talked about that idea of creating form, or the illusion of form, by varying that value gradually, or what we call gradation, and showing this idea of form as light strikes a rounded surface, gradually getting darker, that gradation of the light and dark. And then I threw you this word called chiaroscuro, right? I'm not going to test you on how you say that, but you know what it means, right? It's light and dark put together. And this idea of form in painting or drawing or showing the illusion on a flat surface, where artists decided this is the way to do it. They finally discovered how to do it. And they showed that modeling of form by skillful use of pencil, chalk, charcoal, paint, to show the illusion of roundness on a flat surface. And that's chiaroscuro. And we talked about this really dramatic lighting too, right? Tenebrism, that dramatic kind of dark area with a spotlight on it. And so that deals with light and value and so on. Then we talked about perspective, 1 and 2 point perspective. I'm not going to have you do a drawing of perspective or anything. We used to do that. But this idea of this man named Filippo Brunelleschi. Come in. You okay? You all right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have your review?
No, sir. I have video on the phone.
Here you go. What's the price now, y'all? $6, $7, $7? Okay. No. Hadn't worried. No, we're not trying to embarrass you. Come on in. Glad you're here. Okay, so what did Filippo Brunelleschi do? This Italian genius. He decided, not pointillism, but he decided how to show this illusion of depth on a flat surface. And this idea of 1 point perspective and then 2 point perspective, that things seem to diminish in the distance, and this idea that lines seem to converge at a point in the distance on the horizon line, which is equal to our eye level, right? My eye level is here. If I stand up, my head will almost be off the screen there, but my eye level has changed, right? My viewpoint has changed. My perspective has changed. Now, I'm going to see if I can pull this up here and put this on screen, because I want to show this example from what we talked about the other day, and this may... Hello. It's waking up. Okay, here we go. Now, get down here to the bottom somewhere. And this idea, okay, let's look at this. Here's a great example of 1 point perspective, because we can tell, and this is a drawing done, but this idea of this person looking down this, in this church, this amazing church in Florence, the Church of Santo Spirito, the Holy Spirit there. And here's the actual church. And I hope you get to walk into it. Designed by Filippo Brunelleschi. He was a man of all trades. Like I said, one of the forgotten geniuses by some people. But when you look down this, you're just seeing the building, right? But look for a moment, and the point of view where the photograph was taken here, and let me put it up on screen here. point of view where this was taken, we're looking down to the altar from the back of the church. You see the columns and so on there. But where the eye level was of the camera is our perspective. And we could say that below that, the lines seem to go upward, right? You see the lines in the floor. You see the lines in the wall that are seeming to tilt upward. And the lines at the ceiling, we go to the top of the columns. We could draw a line from those edges of those column capitals, the tops of the capitals down toward the altar. The lines that are up above there, going down to that, even the lines of the ceiling, this highly decorated ceiling, all of that seems to converge or go together at that one vanishing point in the distance. Can you see it? And we looked at this the other day, and we looked at some examples of how artists have depicted this. Let me get to, where is my, skipping around here, sorry. We're going to get to it. I missed it. There we go. Now here's Brunelleschi's experiment. He drew this, but you can see those lines converging there. This is a painting drawn and painted from life, but you can see those lines on the floor, in the tiling, on the architecture in the room, and so on, going to that one vanishing point, right? So that's what we're talking about, that perspective. And here's Brunelleschi's amazing experiment where he showed that, and you see this kind of an idea wherever you are. Look for it. In my drawing classes, I would have students go out on campus. We'd draw inside a building, we'd draw outside of a building. I had them do 1-point and 2-point perspective drawings. And some of them struggled. But it's just a matter of seeing what's right in front of you and realizing that those angles are there. Just that's the way it appears from your point of view and looking at what's there in front of you. And they try to show this in the textbook here too. So, now I wanted to show this too because I wanted to mention this. This is a terrible illustration. You never draw a front view of an eye when you have a profile of a face. This is from the old text, but it shows this cone of vision. And I said, when you're looking straight ahead, I can hold my fingers out here, and I can see them in my peripheral vision, right? I can see some of the ceiling and everything here on my desk in front of me. That's my cone of vision. Now, we see perspective also because if our eyes are both healthy, we have what's called binocular vision. We see with eyes from different points of view. You can close one eye and you see a certain view, but if you close the other eye and open that one, it sort of jumps back and forth a little bit, doesn't it? And so those two images put together, God gave us this certain perfect distance here. So it gives us the feeling of depth. I had an eye injured one time, and I had it taped up, and I had to drive myself home from the emergency room. And my wife, I couldn't reach her, and they said, "You'll be fine, just take it easy." I wish they had said, "Wait till somebody drives you home," because your eyes patched up and you're having to not only look and try to check the rearview mirror and all, but you have no depth perception. You lose sense of depth, and you can cover your eye up and reach for something like these pencils, and finally you get to it, but you may end up knocking them off the desk. So depth perception in that binocular vision is very important. It gives us this idea of depth in front of us. So that's important. Okay, we're moving along, aren't we? Down to the bottom of page 2. Let's move on to page 3 on the review. This idea of foreshortening here is what Albrecht Dürer is trying to show here in this drawing of this woman, looking at her from that angle, but it's the idea of what Mantegna has shown us. It's this finger, Uncle Sam pointing toward you and saying, "I want you." It kind of puts you in the picture there. But you think of your finger like this, that would be one image to draw, but if it's pointed towards you, it's this compressed view. and it gives us a feeling of depth, this compressed view that we're really right in the picture. We're there and looking at this body in a strange position, right? So thinking about how Mantegna did that, that's again understanding this idea of perspective and how lines and shapes and so on fit together to create this illusion of depth on a flat surface. Now, let's go on from there. We talked about color, we talked about value and so on, but we talked about this idea of how all light, white light, this pure sunlight, artificial light is different. I can look at these lights that they put in here. Some are more white, some are more yellow. You have different temperatures of lights and so on. You can see it in people's headlights. You can see it in porch lights if they've got LED lights on or whatever. They put some LED street lights on my street. It's like you could almost read from those in the next yard. That's how bright they are. So different wavelengths of light and intensity and so on. But we said all colors come from the white light, right? And we see here how it's divided up with prism. And Sir Isaac Newton figured all this out, another genius. But we said all light has three properties. The name of the color we refer to as what? The hue, H-U-E. The lightness or darkness of the color we refer to as what? The value. And how strong the light is what? The saturation or the intensity. Those three values, hue, value, and intensity, or you can say saturation. So all light has those qualities. And if you change one, you change the other two. Change the name of the color, you change the value of it. Anyway. And we said that primary colors, we had that in one of the tables here, red, yellow, and blue. They're red, yellow, and blue to mix together to make the other colors. Why are they primary? You can't make them from anything except the pure pigments, right? You can't mix any of the other colors. Let me scroll down here on the color wheel to make red. You can't mix anything else together to make yellow, nor blue. You can use those colors to make the full range of the other colors, but I lost my place here. Yeah, and we said this too, that you have these colors in the rainbow. Someone sent a thing to post it on their Facebook page the other day down in South Texas where they're getting some rain. They had a double rainbow. And I looked at that again and I thought, yeah, that's exactly what you see. You see these colors, and it's the little boy who lives on the rainbow, right? Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow. G for green. Blue indigo is blue, violet, and violet. But then the other rainbow was just the opposite of that. It started at red and went the other direction. So if you see the double rainbow, look for that. Yeah, but this idea of the primary colors, and then going back to this, the secondary colors are the twos there. They're made from equal mixtures of the primary colors. So I take an equal amount of yellow, an equal amount of red, I get orange. If I have a little more yellow, I get what we call the tertiary color, the third group, yellow-orange, the double-named colors. And we talked about analogous colors and so on. I'm not going to go to that slide, I didn't mean to. Oh, and we talked about this idea that there is such a thing called an after image. That's why this works. Y'all looked at this flag, stared at that little dot in the center for 15 seconds or so, closed your eyes, then opened them, and then you see this American flag because of what is termed an after image. But it's just an association of those colors being seen so long and your eye reacts that way to that. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to show you was this thing that you mentioned, Nick, a while ago, this idea that Seurat came up with this is a close-up of what we see. If you magnified your textbook, you would see these little half-tone dots. Now, your printer, your computer printer at home, they're a little more visible, aren't they? But they should blend pretty nicely. We've got good high-resolution printers these days. But Seurat was doing something in the late 1800s where he was taking little dots of color, or points of color, we might say, and mixing them together visually. He was putting red and blue dots together, but not making violet. He was letting the certain distance and people's vision blend those together to create that other color. So it's what we call pointillism. We'll look at that more later, but you see it in this work, and we'll study this work when we talk about this period of time later. This is a very large painting. When you went to Chicago, did you see this? Did you go to the Art Institute? Okay. Next trip, right? All right. So, questions about anything, anyone, in any class? You prepared? You feel I've prepared you well? If you paid attention, you feel better about it, right? No anxiety. There's no safe corner. You don't have to have a comfort corner to go into or anything. You should feel nice and safe, right? So, I'll give you a moment to look over your notes, and then you can put these away, and then we'll take the test. But hang around after the test, because I'm going to forge on as time allows. Make sure when you get this paper that you put your name on your paper, please. Take your time, read over everything carefully. I tried to make it all clear. But take your time and look over your test, don't miss anything. And then when you finish, I have a bonus for you. And this will add points if you get this, so I'll put this up on screen here in a sec.
Are you ready for us to pass the test out?
Pardon?
Are you ready for us to pass out the test?
Yes, please. Yeah, if you haven't gotten your test, get it. Make sure your name is on it, please. And then go ahead and take your time, read everything carefully, no trick questions. Make sure you answer every question, there are 10. And then when you're finished, there is a bonus question I'll put here. And just write that in the space at the bottom. You can write your answer to it. You don't need to write this. Just your response. But go ahead and do all the questions and then answer this bonus if you feel like you know the answer. It won't take away anything, but it can give you some extra points. Y'all let me know too in Lubbock and Plainview when everyone's finished. Y'all let me know, Judy and Miss Betts, when everyone's through.
Okay.
Thank you. Was that okay? You're finished, Judy?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
they're not finished yet, but they're not finished in Plainview yet.
Okay, very good.
We're finished in Lubbock.
Thank you. Plainview, are y'all finished?
No, sir. I have one more.
Okay, all right. That's fine. Thank you.
Mhm. We're done in Plainview.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to start on the second part. Now, I'll try to get these grades sent to you, and I haven't finished getting my grade center set up on Blackboard, but I will, I'll see you on Thursday, and your facilitators will have your grades for you if I don't get those posted on Blackboard. So y'all be patient about that. But I was telling students here a while ago that since this is half of the test, you'll make sure that your mics aren't open in Plainview and Lubbock. We're getting some background noise. And that may just be the system, I'm sorry. But if you get your grade and you didn't miss a question and you made a 50, well, it's only half the test, right? So multiply that by 2, so you're all right, okay? Now, if you get the bonus, that's 5 extra points. So you might make a 55, which is like making 110, right? So you're doing well. And I'm going to try to prepare you every time with my lectures, but also with my reviews. But make sure that you do your part and take your notes, and you'll be in good shape. We're going to forge on now, and actually we didn't finish all the art elements, so that's where I'm going to be today, I think. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm going to show you a little video clip first, if I can show it. And that's this. We'll watch part of this. If it will play. Okay, this is in, if I can get it to put on screen, there. There we go. There we go. I'm not sure about the sounds. It's, it may just be showing it. May not be any sound with this one. But what you're seeing there is a mobile in the National Gallery. Are y'all looking at the screen here? This is a mobile, which is a sculpture that moves, and we're going to be talking about motion. So when Alexander Calder developed this idea, first just did these small things with bent wire and pieces of metal, and then painted them in primary colors. But this one, I'll talk more about the structure of it later, but it's a huge thing, and it's not motorized. It just moves by the people that walk in and out of this gallery. Someone in this class say they've been in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C.? It's on your list to go see it, right? And when you walk in there, you've got an upper balcony and all these different art galleries, but you see this thing moving, and it's so delicately balanced that people walking in and out, you know, if you walk by a table, sometimes a paper blows off, right, just by your motion in the room. The motion of people moving in there, and maybe some of the air conditioning, heating system, makes this thing spin. And it weighs over a ton. And they're just showing some close-ups of it. Let me see if I can move to a different one. Here is, there was a time lapse. I pulled that up earlier. There we go. Here we go. And you can see over a period of time where, are y'all with me? You can see how this thing is suspended from the center of this big atrium area, but how it moves over that time lapse there. Okay, that's enough YouTube today, right? So I want to give you back get back to this principles of design. But I want to talk about motion today. In a little bit of time we have, we'll start with that and begin. If you're in your text, page 102 is the principles of design. But I want to go back for just a moment to time and motion, in the text, and that's page 99, and talk about that. Let me start right here with this, and we'll go back to, jump back for just a moment here. Art, we said, is communication. It used these visual elements. So those are the ingredients in a recipe, and you have the whole list there. And what we didn't cover so far is time and motion. We talked about space, texture, color, shape, so on. We've got that list already. Here's Calder's Mobile, and you see a good clear picture of that, how it's suspended there. And this is bent tubing and pieces of steel, Corten steel, or it's a coarse steel. And yeah, I said it's a ton, I was wrong, 920 pounds, but that's pretty heavy, right? You wouldn't want it to fall on you. That's nearly a half ton. And it is 29 feet by 75 feet at its widest. And then if you measure the depth of it, it's a certain depth or thickness of it from the top to the bottom. But that's pretty amazing sculpture. And it's one of the first times that sculpture moved. So he incorporated the idea of motion into a work where it actually moved. Now, your text talks about time being an interval of certain duration, and so having motion, but actual motion has to do with kinetic art, like a mobile that actually moves, and then we see it in photography. But usually art shows implied motion. It's like stopping time and showing one image or maybe multiple images put together where time is implied. So we'll look at some examples of that. Some are in the text and some are not, but I'm going to add some in there that should help it feel. What do they call PE now? Kinesthesiology? Isn't that what it's listed as? So which has to do with motion, right? Yes. Okay. Has to do with motion and the motion of the body and the way that the body works together. So this is art that moves. It has to do with motion, and a mobile is just that. Now, ancient works, artists tried to show this hunting scene. And so these bowmen went out. They couldn't go to the meat market at United or go to Costco or wherever. They had to go out and hunt if they wanted to survive. And so you see different scenes here put together into this one hunting scene. They put multiple arrows in some of these animals. And I don't know if any of you have ever hunted, or you may not be for hunting or whatever, but we can just have the convenience of people raising cattle or chickens or whatever, and we can have that meat. But they had to hunt for their meat to survive. And so you see the multiple images of this put into one scene, and that's a fairly common thing from ancient times. This was in the previous text, but I wanted to show you this. This is this pilgrimage that Anthony went on to see Paul. And you see him setting out in the top corner there in the journey, and then you see temptation comes along and interrupts his journey, or tries to. And then finally, down at the bottom, it shows the end of the journey. He reaches his final pilgrimage. It ends with the meeting with St. Paul. And both of them have these halos on, signifying their holiness. So you have that kind of image combination of montage in scenes. Here's the harvesters there. It shows different parts of the harvest, people worn out and resting, taking a lunch break, or just being lazy, I don't know. But you see the workers there cutting this by hand, cutting this wheat, this grain. So it's the idea of things in sequence. And you have this, if you have your text, page 98, Masaccio, the Italian artist, showing the tribute money. And this is a story from the Bible. We'll pick up here next time. But it's a story, and you see several scenes put together in this. And so we'll continue with this next time on Thursday, and continue with finishing the elements and then get on to the principles. Y'all take care, let me know, I'll have tests graded, I'll send you all the grades there in Lubbock and Plainview.